The first signs appeared in the silence, not in a public statement, not during a royal engagement, but inside a private room where King Charles III, Prince William, and a handful of trusted advisors gathered behind closed doors. Whatever was discussed that day never officially reached the public. Yet when William emerged, palace observers noticed something they had never seen before: a future king who seemed completely speechless. And at the center of that growing mystery stood Queen Camilla. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The palace has weathered countless storms over the years. Scandals have come and gone. Family disagreements have erupted into headlines before slowly fading from public attention. But this felt different. The atmosphere surrounding the monarchy had been changing for months, and those closest to the institution could sense it long before anyone outside the royal walls began asking questions. Reports suggested that King Charles had become increasingly reflective in recent months, spending more time reviewing matters tied to the future of the crown rather than the daily demands of royal life. While official schedules continued as normal, conversations behind closed doors appeared to be taking on a far more serious tone. It all seemed to come to a head when Charles personally requested an unusually private meeting with Prince William. On the surface, that might not sound remarkable. Father and son meet regularly to discuss matters concerning the monarchy. Yet according to growing speculation among royal commentators, this gathering was different from the very beginning. Several senior palace aides were reportedly excluded from portions of the discussions. Certain staff members who would normally be present were asked to wait outside. Even individuals accustomed to handling sensitive royal affairs found themselves shut out of key moments. That level of secrecy immediately fueled whispers that something major was unfolding. As news of the meeting quietly spread through palace circles, rumors began taking on a life of their own. Some believed Charles was discussing succession planning, others suspected important changes involving royal duties. But one name kept resurfacing in nearly every conversation: Camilla. The Queen had spent years transforming her public image, gradually earning acceptance after decades of controversy. Yet suddenly, insiders appeared to be questioning what role she would play in the monarchy's future, once Charles was no longer able to carry out his responsibilities. The fact that such discussions were allegedly taking place at all was enough to trigger widespread curiosity. Then came the detail that truly captured attention. Sources familiar with the situation claimed William entered the meeting expecting one outcome and left facing another entirely. Nobody outside that room knew exactly what had been said. Nobody could confirm the precise words exchanged between father and son. Yet observers reportedly noticed a visible shift in William afterward. This was a man known for composure, discipline, and careful control. He rarely allowed emotions to surface in public settings. But following the meeting, palace staff allegedly detected a tension that was impossible to ignore. Conversations became shorter. Expressions appeared heavier. The usual rhythm inside royal corridors seemed disrupted by something unseen but deeply significant. As speculation intensified, royal commentators began offering their own interpretations. Some suggested Charles had finally reached a conclusion after months of private reflection. Others believed ongoing concerns about legacy, stability, and the future direction of the monarchy had pushed him toward a decision he could no longer postpone. Theories multiplied with each passing day, but they all revolved around one central question. What had suddenly convinced the king that action was necessary now? Why had a matter involving Camilla become urgent enough to require such extraordinary secrecy? The answers remained hidden, buried beneath layers of royal discretion and carefully guarded conversations. Yet one thing seemed increasingly clear. Whatever Charles had revealed was not a temporary adjustment or a routine administrative matter. It carried enough weight to leave even the future king struggling to find words. And as palace whispers continued to grow louder, the mystery surrounding that meeting only deepened, pulling more people into a story that appeared far bigger than anyone initially imagined. But to understand why William was left stunned, it is necessary to revisit the long and complicated path that brought Charles and Camilla to this moment. For decades, Charles and Camilla endured criticism, controversy, and relentless scrutiny. Yet through every storm, One constant remained the king's determination to protect the woman he loved, regardless of public opinion. Long before the titles, ceremonies, and official roles, their story had already become one of the most debated relationships in modern royal history. It was a journey marked by loyalty, heartbreak, public anger, and years of uncertainty. Few relationships connected to the monarchy have faced such intense examination. Every step forward seemed to come with another obstacle. Every attempt at acceptance appeared to trigger another wave of criticism. Yet despite the pressure, Charles never abandoned the belief that Camilla deserved a place beside him. That conviction would shape not only their future, but eventually the future of the monarchy itself. For years, the very mention of Camilla's name sparked fierce reactions. Public opinion remained divided, and many questioned whether she would ever be fully accepted within royal circles. Yet while critics focused on controversy, Charles focused on endurance. He appeared willing to wait as long as necessary for attitudes to soften. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the atmosphere began to change. What once seemed impossible gradually became reality. Through consistent public appearances, charitable work, and a carefully managed role within royal life, Camilla started gaining acceptance from people who had once refused to consider her part of the institution. That transformation did not happen overnight. It unfolded over years of patience and persistence. As public hostility eased, Camilla's position inside the royal family became increasingly secure. The woman once viewed as an outsider eventually became queen consort and later queen. It was a remarkable rise, one built not through sudden victories but through countless moments of quiet resilience. Behind the scenes, Charles remained her strongest defender. Whenever questions emerged about her place within the monarchy, reports consistently suggested that he stood firmly by her side. His support was not temporary. It became one of the defining themes of his later life. Yet even as Camilla's standing improved, the situation remained complicated for other members of the family. William's relationship with his stepmother was often viewed through a lens of caution rather than closeness. By most accounts, he maintained a respectful approach, recognizing the reality of his father's choices, while also carrying the responsibilities that came with being the future king. There were no dramatic public confrontations, no obvious signs of conflict, yet observers frequently sensed an unspoken balance being maintained. William respected the institution. He respected his father, but he also understood that public trust would ultimately shape the future reign he would one day inherit. As the years passed, a new challenge emerged. Charles's health struggles introduced an element of urgency that could no longer be ignored. Suddenly, conversations that once belonged to the distant future became immediate concerns. Questions about succession, continuity, and long-term stability moved from theoretical discussions to pressing realities. Palace insiders increasingly speculated that Charles had entered a period of deep reflection. Legacy became more important than ever. Not simply how he would be remembered personally, but how history would judge the decisions he made during the final chapter of his reign. That possibility gave new meaning to the mysterious meeting that had left William speechless. If Charles had indeed been evaluating the future through the lens of history, then every decision carried enormous weight. Every choice had consequences extending far beyond the present moment. The story was no longer just about a husband protecting his wife. It was becoming a larger question about the future shape of the monarchy itself, and whether personal loyalty could coexist with institutional responsibility. As questions about legacy grew louder, attention shifted from the past to an even more important issue: the future structure of the monarchy itself. Every monarch eventually faces the same question: what survives when they are gone? For Charles, that question reportedly became impossible to avoid as discussions about succession, public trust, and the future image of the crown intensified. The monarchy has always been larger than any one individual. Kings come and go. Queens rise and fall. Generations pass through history. Yet the institution remains, carried forward by duty, tradition, and public confidence. That reality reportedly weighed heavily on King Charles as he entered a period of growing reflection. What had once been distant concerns suddenly became urgent matters demanding immediate attention. The future was no longer an abstract concept. It was approaching rapidly, and according to royal commentators, Charles understood that every decision made today could shape how the crown functioned for decades to come. Behind palace walls, Reports suggested that long-term planning discussions had become increasingly frequent. Advisors were not simply focused on current events or upcoming engagements. Instead, attention was turning toward the monarchy's future structure and how it would operate under William's eventual reign. Stability became the central objective. Continuity became the guiding principle. Every conversation reportedly revolved around one crucial question: how could the institution remain strong during a period of significant transition? The answer was not simple, and the deeper officials examined the issue, the more difficult the choices appeared to become. Senior advisors were said to be emphasizing modernization and efficiency. The world had changed dramatically, and expectations surrounding the royal family had changed with it. Public trust, transparency, and relevance were increasingly viewed as essential factors for the monarchy's long-term survival. This was not merely about preserving tradition. It was about ensuring that tradition could continue to thrive in a rapidly evolving environment. According to growing speculation, these discussions forced Charles to confront uncomfortable realities about what the future might require. At the center of many of those conversations stood a familiar and sensitive topic: Camilla's role in the years ahead. For decades, Charles had fought to protect her position. He had defended her during difficult periods, supported her rise within royal life, and remained steadfast through countless controversies. Yet as strategic planning intensified, questions reportedly emerged that could not be ignored forever. What role would Camilla occupy in a future monarchy led by William? How would the public view that role? And perhaps most importantly, how would those decisions affect confidence in the institution itself? Those questions reportedly created a delicate balancing act between personal loyalty and public perception. Charles's devotion to Camilla was never a secret. It had become one of the defining features of his personal story. But monarchs rarely have the luxury of making decisions based solely on personal feelings. Every choice carries broader consequences. Every action becomes part of a larger historical record. As concerns about legacy continued growing, Charles reportedly found himself navigating an increasingly difficult crossroads where emotion and responsibility no longer pointed in the same direction. Meanwhile, William's involvement in these discussions appeared to deepen. As heir to the throne, his future responsibilities demanded a greater role in long-term planning. Sources close to royal circles suggested that he was being consulted more frequently on matters concerning institutional stability, public expectations, and future governance. What began as routine conversations gradually evolved into something far more significant. The future king was no longer simply preparing for eventual leadership. He was becoming an active participant in shaping what that future would look like. With every discussion, the stakes seemed to rise. Possibilities that once felt unthinkable were now being openly evaluated. Difficult choices reportedly began taking shape behind closed doors. The atmosphere surrounding the monarchy grew heavier with anticipation, as though everyone involved understood that a turning point was approaching. Nobody knew exactly when it would arrive. Nobody knew precisely what form it would take. But the sense of inevitability was becoming impossible to ignore. Then came a series of private conversations that insiders claim changed everything behind palace walls. The atmosphere inside the palace reportedly shifted after a confidential meeting that lasted far longer than expected. When the doors finally opened, those waiting outside sensed immediately that something significant had happened. By this point, the questions surrounding the future of the monarchy were no longer confined to quiet speculation. They had become the focus of increasingly serious discussions taking place behind some of the most guarded doors in the royal household. For months, whispers had circulated about strategic reviews, succession planning, and preparations for a future that seemed to be arriving faster than anyone expected. Yet according to palace observers, one particular meeting stood apart from all the others. It was longer, more secretive, and, according to those familiar with the mood afterward, far more consequential. Reports suggested that King Charles spent hours engaged in detailed conversations with a small circle of trusted advisors. These were not routine briefings or ordinary updates. The discussions reportedly centered on long-term decisions that could shape the monarchy for years to come. Every possibility was examined. Every outcome was weighed carefully. Sources claimed that the future structure of the institution was being evaluated through a lens of stability, public confidence, and historical legacy. But no matter how many subjects were discussed, attention repeatedly returned to one sensitive issue that refused to disappear: Camilla's future position within the royal family. The topic carried enormous emotional weight. For decades, Charles had invested not only his reputation, but also much of his personal happiness in protecting and supporting Camilla. Her rise from controversy to acceptance had been one of the defining stories of his life. Yet the reality facing the king now was very different from the battles he had fought years earlier. This was no longer about defending a relationship. It was about defining a legacy. And according to growing speculation, that distinction changed everything. As the discussions progressed, reports suggested that William was invited into the final stages of deliberation. Until that moment, much of the planning had reportedly remained within a limited circle. But now the future king was being brought directly into the conversation. Those familiar with royal traditions understood the significance immediately. William was not being consulted simply as a son. He was being consulted as the man who would one day inherit responsibility for the institution itself. The burden of future leadership had entered the room alongside him. What happened next remains the subject of intense speculation. Yet sources close to palace circles consistently point toward one striking detail. Charles reportedly did not present a proposal. He presented a decision. The distinction may seem small, but insiders suggest it altered the entire tone of the meeting. Proposals invite debate. Decisions demand acceptance. Whatever conclusion Charles had reached, reports indicate that he had already spent months wrestling with it privately before bringing it forward. By the time William heard it, the king appeared to have made up his mind. That realization reportedly caught William off guard. Many expected discussions. Few expected finality. According to observers, the firmness of Charles's position surprised even those who believed major changes were under consideration. This was not the hesitant uncertainty of a monarch struggling with difficult choices. It was the determination of someone who had finally reached a conclusion after a long internal battle. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Palace insiders later described the atmosphere as unusually serious. Conversations became quieter. Movements seemed more deliberate. Even those who knew little about the meeting reportedly sensed that something important had shifted. The mood carried the unmistakable feeling of an institution preparing for a turning point. As rumors spread, speculation intensified that a historic transition plan was being finalized behind closed doors. The possibility alone was enough to send shockwaves through royal circles. Yet despite all the whispers, nobody outside that room fully understood the scale of what had been decided. The details remained hidden. The implications remained uncertain. But one thing appeared increasingly clear. Whatever Charles had revealed was far larger than a simple administrative adjustment. It touched the future itself. And as the weight of that realization settled over everyone involved, a new sense of anticipation began taking hold. What Charles revealed next would reportedly leave even his closest allies struggling to process the implications. Those familiar with royal dynamics rarely describe William as easily shocked. Yet according to growing speculation, the king's final decision regarding Camilla triggered exactly that reaction. For years, Prince William had operated within a world where patience, caution, and preparation were essential. Every major decision was studied carefully. Every transition was expected to unfold gradually. That was the rhythm of royal life. Nothing happened suddenly. Nothing happened without layers of planning. Yet reports surrounding this private meeting suggest that William found himself confronting something entirely different. What he believed would be another strategic discussion about the future reportedly transformed into a moment that carried the weight of finality. According to growing speculation within royal circles, Charles used the meeting to outline his final wishes regarding Camilla's future position within the monarchy. The exact details remain closely guarded, hidden behind palace discretion and official silence. Yet sources familiar with the atmosphere surrounding the discussions suggest that the king spoke with unusual certainty. This was not the language of possibility. It was not a collection of ideas awaiting approval. It was reportedly a vision he had already accepted in his own mind after months of private reflection and emotional struggle. For William, that certainty may have been the most surprising element of all. Reports indicate that he expected a more gradual approach, one that would allow future arrangements to evolve naturally over time. Such expectations were understandable. The monarchy traditionally moves carefully, especially when dealing with matters that touch public perception and institutional stability. Yet what emerged from the discussion reportedly appeared larger, more comprehensive, and far more definitive than anticipated. Suddenly, questions that seemed years away felt immediate. That realization reportedly created a moment of genuine shock. Palace insiders claim William initially struggled to respond, not because he failed to understand the importance of what was being discussed, but because of the sheer magnitude of its implications. Every future scenario he had considered now appeared altered by the king's determination. The emotional weight of that realization was difficult to ignore. This was not simply a conversation about one individual's role. It was a discussion about the shape of the monarchy after Charles, the expectations placed upon future generations, and the balance between personal loyalty and institutional responsibility. The contrast was striking. For decades, Charles had been defined by his commitment to Camilla. He had defended her through controversy, criticism, and public doubt. His loyalty never appeared to waver. Yet now, according to speculation, the same king seemed focused on ensuring that future arrangements served a broader purpose. Whether those plans favored continuity, adjustment, or a carefully structured transition remained unclear. But the very fact that such decisions were being finalized reportedly left William confronting possibilities he had not fully expected. As rumors spread, questions began multiplying throughout royal circles. How would these decisions affect future royal arrangements? What role would Camilla ultimately occupy in the years ahead? How would the public respond once details eventually emerged? Most importantly, what would this mean for William when the responsibility of leadership eventually became his? Each question created another layer of uncertainty, adding to the growing sense that something historic was quietly unfolding behind palace walls. Observers soon noticed subtle changes in William's demeanor. Nothing dramatic, nothing that could be officially confirmed. Yet many described a future king who appeared more thoughtful, more measured, and perhaps more aware than ever of the responsibilities waiting ahead. The meeting seemed to leave a lasting impression, one that extended beyond immediate concerns and into questions of legacy itself. Meanwhile, public curiosity intensified. The lack of information only fueled greater speculation. Every silence generated new theories. Every unanswered question deepened the mystery. People sensed that a significant chapter in the monarchy's story was being written in private, away from public view. Yet despite growing interest, the details remained hidden, protected by the same walls that had concealed the original conversation. What made the situation even more compelling was the realization that the consequences would not end with those who sat inside that room. The decision reportedly carried implications reaching far beyond Charles, William, or Camilla individually. It touched the future direction of the institution itself. Yet the true impact of Charles's choice extended far beyond a single conversation between father and son. Even before any official announcement, subtle changes reportedly began appearing throughout royal operations. To experienced palace watchers, such shifts often signal that major decisions have already been made. The most significant transformations inside royal institutions rarely begin with public declarations. They begin quietly. A meeting is scheduled differently. A planning session expands unexpectedly. Certain conversations suddenly become priorities while others fade into the background. According to growing speculation, that was exactly what started happening in the weeks following Charles's reported decision. While no formal announcement had been made, many observers believed the machinery of the monarchy had already begun adjusting to a future that was taking shape behind closed doors. Reports suggested that internal planning accelerated almost immediately. Discussions that had once focused on possibilities reportedly shifted toward preparation. Palace officials are said to have spent increasing amounts of time evaluating future arrangements, reviewing responsibilities, and examining how different transitions might unfold. Nothing appeared dramatic on the surface. Yet beneath the calm exterior, there was a growing sense that key figures were preparing for developments that could eventually redefine important aspects of royal life. At the heart of these conversations was a familiar priority: continuity. For centuries, the monarchy has survived because it plans far beyond the present moment. Every generation prepares the next. Every transition is carefully managed. According to insiders, that principle became especially important as questions surrounding Charles's future plans gained momentum. Staff discussions reportedly centered on stability, consistency, and ensuring that the institution remained strong regardless of what changes might lie ahead. The focus was not on individuals, it was on preserving the crown itself. Yet individuals remained impossible to ignore. Camilla's future public role quickly became one of the most closely watched subjects within royal circles. The uncertainty surrounding her position fueled endless speculation. Some believed her responsibilities would evolve gradually. Others suspected a more clearly defined arrangement was being considered. Regardless of the specific details, one thing seemed increasingly clear. The conversation had moved beyond the present. People were now trying to understand how Camilla would fit into a monarchy that would eventually be shaped by William's leadership rather than Charles's. That shift naturally brought greater attention to the future king. According to reports, William's role within long-term planning discussions expanded significantly. He was no longer viewed simply as the heir waiting for his turn. Instead, he appeared to be playing an increasingly active role in helping guide strategic decisions. The responsibility was enormous. Every choice carried implications that could stretch decades into the future. Every discussion required balancing tradition with public expectations. And with each passing week, William reportedly found himself positioned closer to the center of those conversations. The pressure attached to that role was impossible to overlook. On one side stood family relationships built over years of shared experiences, loyalty, and personal history. On the other stood the institution itself, an organization whose survival depended on public trust and careful stewardship. Senior figures within royal circles reportedly emphasized the same message repeatedly. The monarchy must always come first. Individual preferences matter. Personal emotions matter. But protecting the institution remains the ultimate responsibility. That philosophy appeared to influence nearly every aspect of the planning process. Decisions were reportedly evaluated not through the lens of popularity or sentiment, but through the broader question of what best served the future of the crown. It was a perspective that demanded difficult conversations and potentially difficult compromises. Yet many insiders believed those discussions reflected a deeper understanding of what was at stake. This was not simply about managing a transition. It was about safeguarding a legacy that stretched across generations. As preparations quietly continued, the monarchy seemed to be entering a new phase. The outlines of its next chapter were beginning to emerge, even if the public could not yet see the full picture. The future remained uncertain. Many questions remained unanswered. Yet behind palace walls, there was a growing sense that important decisions had already set events in motion. The institution was preparing itself for whatever came next, guided by the belief that stability must endure beyond any single reign. But while the institution focused on the future, another question remained unanswered: how would history remember this moment? History often forces leaders to choose between the people they love and the responsibilities they inherit. According to royal observers, Charles may have faced exactly that dilemma when reaching his final conclusion. For much of his life, King Charles appeared determined to prove that loyalty and duty could exist side by side. It was a belief that helped define his personal journey. Through years of controversy, criticism, and relentless public scrutiny, he remained committed to protecting the woman he loved. Yet history has a way of presenting difficult tests at the most unexpected moments. The very qualities that define a leader's personal character can sometimes collide with the responsibilities attached to their position. According to growing speculation, Charles eventually found himself standing at precisely that crossroads. The challenge was not simply emotional, it was deeply institutional. By this stage, discussions about the future of the monarchy had become impossible to separate from broader questions about legacy. What kind of crown would William inherit? What structure would best ensure stability for future generations? How would the decisions made today be viewed decades from now? These questions reportedly occupied an increasing amount of Charles's attention. The more he reflected on them, the more apparent it became that some choices would carry consequences far beyond his own lifetime. This was where the tension between duty and personal loyalty reportedly became most visible. On one side stood Camilla, the person who had remained beside him through some of the most turbulent chapters of his life. Their relationship had survived public backlash, media storms, and years of uncertainty. On the other side stood the monarchy itself, an institution that demanded long-term thinking and often required difficult sacrifices. According to royal observers, Charles understood that history would ultimately judge not only the strength of his personal commitments, but also the wisdom of the decisions he made as king. At the same time, William faced a challenge of his own. Reports suggested that he found himself balancing two roles that were becoming increasingly difficult to separate. He was a son who respected his father and understood the emotional significance of the decisions being discussed. Yet he was also the future monarch, responsible for safeguarding an institution that would eventually become his responsibility. That dual burden reportedly weighed heavily on him. Every conversation carried personal meaning. Every strategic discussion carried historical significance. The line between family and duty appeared thinner than ever. Camilla's place within this story remained equally complex. Her rise had been one of the most remarkable transformations in modern royal history. Once viewed through the lens of controversy, she had gradually become an accepted and established figure within royal life. Yet according to ongoing speculation, the questions surrounding her future were never solely about her as an individual. They represented larger debates about continuity, perception, and the evolving identity of the monarchy itself. Her story had become intertwined with the institution's story, making every decision feel even more consequential. Outside palace walls, public curiosity continued growing. The absence of confirmed information created an endless cycle of questions, theories, and interpretations. Every new rumor generated fresh debate. Every unexplained development encouraged further speculation. Yet beneath all the discussion was a deeper recognition that something important was unfolding. People sensed that the royal family was navigating a moment that could shape its future direction for years to come. What made the situation especially powerful was the emotional weight carried by everyone involved. Charles faced the burden of legacy. William faced the burden of inheritance. Camilla faced uncertainty about the role she would occupy in the years ahead. Each carried different responsibilities, different concerns, and different hopes, yet all were connected by the same reality. Some decisions do not merely affect the present, they reshape generations. As those questions lingered, one truth became increasingly difficult to ignore. The choices made during this period would likely be remembered long after the individuals involved were gone. They would become part of the larger story historians would one day tell about a monarchy navigating change, loyalty, and responsibility at a pivotal moment in its history. And as the dust slowly settled, the monarchy found itself standing at the edge of a new era. The silence that followed may have spoken louder than any palace statement ever could. A king had made his choice. A future monarch had heard it. And the consequences would echo far beyond the walls where the conversation began. In many ways, the story had never been about a single meeting. It was about everything that led to that moment and everything that would follow it. Years of loyalty, sacrifice, controversy, and perseverance had converged into a decision that many royal observers believe could become one of the defining moments of King Charles's reign. The significance did not lie solely in what was decided. It lay in what the decision represented. It reflected a monarch looking beyond the present and confronting the difficult realities of legacy, responsibility, and the future of an institution that has survived for centuries. According to ongoing speculation, Charles reached a point where personal feelings and public duty could no longer travel separate paths. The challenges facing the monarchy demanded clarity. The future demanded preparation. Whatever conclusions he ultimately reached, reports suggest they were shaped by a desire to secure long-term stability rather than short-term comfort. For a king who spent much of his life balancing personal conviction against public expectation, the decision carried extraordinary emotional weight. It was not merely an administrative choice, it was a statement about how he wished history to remember his stewardship of the crown. For William, the conversation reportedly marked the beginning of a new chapter. The responsibilities that had always waited in the distance now seemed closer than ever. Every discussion about continuity, succession, and institutional stability increasingly centered around the role he would one day assume. The transition was gradual, but it was unmistakable. According to those who follow royal affairs closely, William appeared to emerge from this period with a deeper awareness of the burdens attached to future leadership. The path ahead remained uncertain, yet the expectations placed upon him had never felt more real. At the center of much of the speculation remained Camilla. Her journey through royal life has been unlike any other. From controversy to acceptance, from criticism to recognition, her story became woven into the broader narrative of Charles's reign. Yet as discussions shifted toward the future, her role increasingly came to be viewed through the lens of legacy, rather than circumstance. Questions about how history would assess her place within the monarchy continued to generate fascination. Supporters and critics alike seemed to recognize that her story could not be separated from the larger transformation the institution had experienced over the past several decades. Meanwhile, the monarchy itself entered a period of reflection. Behind the ceremonies, traditions, and public appearances, deeper questions lingered. How should the institution evolve? What lessons should it carry forward? Which values should guide the next generation of leadership? These questions became part of a broader conversation about continuity in a rapidly changing world. The answers would not emerge overnight. They would unfold gradually through decisions, actions, and choices made over many years. Public fascination only intensified as details remained limited. Every new rumor sparked fresh discussion. Every unexplained development encouraged renewed curiosity. Yet perhaps the mystery itself became part of the story. The absence of certainty allowed people to focus on the larger themes beneath the headlines: sacrifice, duty, loyalty, responsibility. These were the forces shaping events behind the scenes, regardless of the specific details that remained hidden from public view. In the end, that may be why this moment resonated so strongly. It was not simply about Charles, William, or Camilla. It was about the enduring challenge faced by every generation entrusted with preserving an institution larger than themselves. Personal wishes matter. Family bonds matter. Yet the crown operates according to a different standard, one measured not in years but in generations. As one chapter slowly gave way to another, the monarchy stood poised between its past and its future. The questions that once seemed impossible to answer were gradually being confronted. The choices being made today would influence the institution long after current headlines faded from memory. And while debates, speculation, and uncertainty would undoubtedly continue, one truth appeared impossible to escape. The crown remains larger than any individual who wears it, serves it, or protects it. Because in the end, royal history is rarely defined by the titles people hold, it is defined by the choices they make when the future of the crown hangs in the balance. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.